Hello, everyone. We are continuing our journey in 24 authors in 12 hours. And how we just had our backstage discussion, I did not know that Michaela Riley was also an Army veteran. So thank you so much for your service.
Thank you for yours.
And we are here to talk about her amazing book, Labyrinth of Shadows. And I just want to say she sent me a hard copy, like an actual hardback, and others sent me paperbacks. I don't want to discount them, but there is something about a hardback book that when you get it and you're like, I just want to pet this book, right?
I
Like
agree.
this is a beautiful, beautiful book. And so I'm going to put the link for this book into the chat. And while I do that, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what inspired this?
Well, wow. It began, I was working on Ancestry for the Mayflower application. And of course, I discovered witches in my family tree. And I really began to research witches. I've no prior knowledge of a witch. I don't practice witchcraft, but I really loved the story, but many messy parts about witchcraft, right? With witch persecution and then with King James and demonology. And I thought, let me start to write the story. And so I started the story, and then it was really, I can't say bad, but there's so many bad things that they did to witches. I just felt I couldn't write that. So I just put it aside. So I started working on the rest of my ancestry and got to Clovis the First in the 5th century, who was the first king of France. And it was amazing to me that he gave up paganism to become a Christian. And I thought, perhaps I can put the two together. And that's really where the story came from. And it's been an amazing journey to learn about my lineage and the history. And so here I am writing books about witches and writing spells that I have no idea where they came up with.
Well, I will tell you this. I've discovered lately, I say this on Instagram quite a bit, is I'm very pro-witch because really being pro-witch is just kind of being pro-woman, and especially women involved in nature, women involved in like hearth and healing and kind of these old ways. And so often women were just persecuted for these kinds of things.
Absolutely. And that is really a main element of the book for me, is that women were persecuted and not respected. And it was so easy to just blame someone for something that happened to you, right? Oh, it must have been that person because they were a witch. And I really do feel like in writing the book and learning about witches and really feeling their plight, because we were horrible to these women. And I mean, even today, I think people that practice witchcraft or Wicca, can be persecuted. And I think that's unfortunate.
Well, and the theme of the show for this time is dystopia, right? Apocalyptic fiction, speculative fiction. And so people might say, well, I don't really know where this fits into that. And to me, when I look at witches, you want to talk about a dystopia is if you go back to the Spanish Inquisition and the witch burnings, you go to like the US history. I mean, how dystopian was it for these women who had been practicing midwifery, who'd been practicing herbalism, these things for centuries? And what kind of world did it seem to them, a dystopia, that they're not like being burned at the stake and hung for what had just been discovered? Go ahead. Go on.
Gosh. There's so many bad things that happen to them, their innards being removed. I mean, there's so many horrible things that they did to make these women even just say, yes, okay, I'm a witch. Please stop torturing me. And then they die. So yeah, dystopia is definitely there when it comes to the history of witches and witch persecution.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating too, because I know a lot of times it's focused on from an Anglo aspect, but this has also happened in other cultures, in Asia, in Africa, and other places.
Even Italy. Yes. All over the world, there have been witch persecutions and burnings.
Yeah, so I just think such an important thing to talk about as we look at dystopian fiction, as we look at dystopian realities, is, so often those things that are at one point considered just normal, like a woman being a midwife, how it suddenly gets skewed into something not normal very, very quickly.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing about witches, they're just normal women. They're how they get this, I don't know how they got to the witch hat and the brooms and all of that, but they're just women who were able to use the things that God gave us in the earth, plants, those things to make herbal remedies, if you will, and to use their energy, just very much like we use Reiki today, to heal people, and became persecuted for that.
Yeah, so I think great concepts. Let's talk what inspired the book. Like you do have a series of books, and I put the first one in here, but I also just want to make sure I'm putting your website in here so that people can reach you, that they can subscribe to your newsletter, find out more. So let's talk a little bit about what inspired the initial book, and then what inspired the series.
So, wow. I will say that when I started doing the research, there were so many elements that I wanted to put into the books. I knew pretty quickly it was going to have to be more than one book, but I really wasn't sure how that was going to happen. And then I started to really look into paganism and Celtic lore, and that's where the inspiration for book 2 and book 3 came from. Book 2 obviously is the Cauldron of Dagda, and the third book is the Spear of Lugh. And there's really more Celtic lore and battles and obstacles for Morona, the main protagonist, to overcome. And I've learned so much about Celtic beliefs and gods and goddesses, more than I've ever thought that I would learn. But really, those are the inspiration. And I have a dog, and I wish she would have made a presence. Her name is Morrigan, who one of the main characters, the Morrigan, who is the goddess of war. And she shapeshifts into a wolf in the books, as you know. But my dog, the Morrigan, who is a red German Shepherd, was the inspiration for that. And so really that's how the story sort of took off. I laugh and say the cauldron is bubbling and I don't even know what's going to happen next. And that's really how the story, I had so much information and I really wanted to fit it all in there, which is sometimes doesn't always work, right? You have to delete things. But it's been a really fun journey to learn more about history and witchcraft and the evolution of this witch, Morona.
So let's dive into that a bit deeper. I love to learn this from other authors. I think writers and readers enjoy just kind of understanding the thought process behind the book. So a lot of times authors are very much like they storyboard everything out. They're very, very organized. They have outlines. There's authors who are pantsers. They just fly by the seat of their pants. And then there's people who are kind of hybrid, right? So which camp do you fall in?
So when I first started doing the research for the books, I had cork boards and timelines all because I have, for the next series of books, I have a timeline and I needed to make sure everything fit into that, right? And so very structured in that process, right? Setting the outline of the books, very structured. But after that, I have my idea for that chapter. And sometimes, you get to that writer's block. What exactly is she doing here? And why am I writing this? You have those moments. And for me, I take a hike. I'm an avid hiker. And then I always find some inspiration and some way to bring that together. And so for me, then it's very intuitive after that process, sort of just feeling my way through what feels right. What do I want my characters to do next? So I guess I'm a hybrid. Obviously, I'm a bit of both, but I am very structured in that because I wouldn't know where to go if I didn't have this, outline of sort of keeping me on track.
Yeah, and I think that there's something about grounding it in history. My most recent book is really grounded in history, and you've got to kind of like make sure that you're honoring that history. And like mine is not like historical novel, so you have flexibility, but at the same time, I don't want it to be like too far fetched.
Well, when you wrote your book, history, right? To me, and tell me if this is true for you, it was so much fun to put actual historical events in the book. I love that part. But then the story evolves. Then you think that was kind of boring. Let me add in some fantasy. Is it like that for you?
So I wanted to keep it all in there. So early in my book, when I created, was this whole concept that aliens, mysticism, time travel, these are all potentially on the table, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like if I block myself into anywhere, I can always just pull it out and go, oh, new timeline or whatever I need to, because who knows in seven books later, where's this going to go? Like I've got like where I think it's going to go, but then I feel like the characters take on their own. I'm sure you experience this where suddenly you're like, oh, and now my dog is in the story.
Yes, exactly. And my dog is in the story.
You know,
when Marona turns 12. Yeah, it is like that. Or for me, hiking and coming, I found a labyrinth in the woods, and I thought this labyrinth kept going in my mind. I need to add this labyrinth somehow. Hence the book Labyrinth of Shadows. So it is funny. I think we find inspiration in many ways, and we sort of put those things aside, and then we somehow fit them into whatever it is that we're writing. Our creative mind, right?
Exactly. They work together. I want to read a little passage from your book. And first of all, I just want to say this, like, I was like so happy. You sent me a little thank you note. And I was like, oh, this is just like, oh. I use that as the bookmark in here. So I wanted to open up with this part because I just thought like this is pretty powerful. And this is like halfway through your book. I do try not to give away spoilers, but if you haven't figured out what the book is about by now, spoiler alert, the first wave of demons crashed against their defenses like a dark tide. Marona felt the impact reverberate through her body, nearly buckling her knees. She pushed back, her magic flaring bright against the encroaching darkness. Murdoch, on your left, she cried, spotting a group of creatures attempting to flank the dragon. Murdoch pivoted, his tail lashing out and scattering the demons like leaves in a gale. Well spotted, love, he growled, his voice filled with both affection and fierce determination. Suddenly, a group of grotesque creatures broke through Marona's magical barrier. She stumbled back, her eyes wide with fear as her razor-sharp claws reached for her. Time seemed to slow, and panic gripped her as she realized she couldn't react fast enough. Marona and Murdoch's roar split the air, and the blur of scales and fury, he was there, interposing his massive form between her and certain doom. His claws ripped through the demons, turning them into wisps of arched smoke. And I read this passage, and I was just like, demons, dragons, magic, barriers, which like I don't know like which part I could love more, right? So what were you thinking as you kind of wrote? There's a lot here, and if you have not checked out the Amazon site, I do want to make sure I put this in here because you can actually see how Michaela envisions the characters in here. And so I did have this in my mind of Murdoch as both a man and a dragon.
A dragon.
So let's go ahead and talk about what did you envision when you wrote this?
So first of all, you will laugh when you realize my book didn't begin as fantasy. It began as this historical book about a girl who, basically travels through time. And then I was like, I need to add in some fantasy. And who doesn't need a dragon? And who doesn't need a handsome dragon? And, there also has to be the antagonist. And so I'm putting all these things together. And I literally, I think I must go into another world when I'm writing. It's, because you get in that mindset, right? And I'm just writing the scenes. And it's just amazing to me how we can come up with this. But this dragon fiercely loves Marona.
Oh, that's apparent.
He's immortal. And if you go back to the very first chapter, without giving away a spoiler, you'll see that he's standing there waiting because he knows he's going to be there when she comes back, whenever it is. Hence the name of the book, right? The Witch's Rebirth series. And the demon and writing these hordes of demons. And it was really amazing to me and fun because I've got these pictures going on in my head, and I'm trying to do justice as I'm, writing the story and writing the scenes. And so I just hope that you loved it. And you really love Murdoch too, because if you go to moronasrebirth.com, that's my other website. I have videos of all the characters and descriptions of the characters. And for me, it was fun to really picture them. And I did picture them while I was writing it, which is why I did the images, because I think it's fun to be able to have in your head what they actually look like and what they're wearing and what they're doing. So I'm glad you liked it.
No, I think absolutely wonderful. And like I said, I like that passage because even though it's the middle of the book, and normally I try to pick stuff earlier in the book for people because I don't want to give away spoilers. But I'm like, if you haven't figured out that there's a dragon and some demons and a witch with magic, you are probably, I don't think there's any spoilers in this, right? But just the feeling. And so I'm going to ask you, what do you want readers to take away when they read your works? What feelings? What do you want readers to talk about, to say when they read Morona's Birth and Rebirth of Witches?
Well, first of all, from the historical aspect, I don't know if everybody is like me, but when I read a book and I see something, a word perhaps that I don't know, or a time or a place that I don't know, I look them up. And so I hope that characters take the time to look up some of the elements in the book that are historically accurate. But I want them to take away the importance of this character and her evolution, right, from a baby to being a savior, and how important that is in the evolution of all of us, right? We all change and we all have problems and difficulties in our life, just like Morona, the main character. And I want people to really talk about, was there any element in that book that really inspired you to want to be a better person? Because I think that is obviously important, but I want them to talk about the world building, and because I spent a lot of time even for what the plants would look like at that time frame. And I just think for people to sit around and talk about this, my friends and I used to do this all the time. And it's great fun because you get to pick out the characters that you like and strengths and weaknesses, and maybe that mirror who you are. And I hope that they love it or hate it.
I think that, I mean, strong emotions are good either way, right?
Right.
That's like, I mean, personally, like I said, I mean, I'm like, okay, you've got dragons, you've got magic, you've got demons. I mean, you brought like a lot of things to the table here. And then, like I said, I've discovered the past, I would say, year or so, I was like, I describe myself, I'm like, I am pro witch now. Like, this is what I've really learned. I really learned I'm kind of like pro goddess. Like, let's bring these back because, even though these may be uncomfortable concepts for some people, I think just really recognizing it and what you're doing with the witches and really reclaiming them as powerful women.
Right. She's reclaiming her power. As many of us have been maybe knocked down in life, and we have to grow and we have to learn to reclaim our power, much like Morona, who reclaims her power through the book and just becomes stronger with every book. I will say, though, the spells that I wrote in the book, I wouldn't practice them on anybody because obviously they are fiction. and they're also in Irish. So I don't know if you noticed that, but I had to go back and rewrite the spells because they were in Latin. And my son said, "Mom, if this is about Celtic gods, perhaps it should be in Irish." So we had to rewrite all the spells in the book. But
that's an important point, and people don't even realize, like, you've got to think about those nuances of, does this make sense, right, based on the characters, but also the culture, all these things that you're bringing in, because, like you said, there is history in Italy. You could have then used that to go back into Rome and use the Latin spells, but instead you're like, no, I'm going to use this different route. Yeah, and now I'm actually going to rewrite my spells.
Yes.
So a lot of world building.
It was fun to write them because I ordered witch books. I ordered books about spells. And I thought none of these are really getting to what it is that I want. And so I actually have Morona has a grimoire now, which isn't published yet, but it was fun to write it because it has all of her spells and when she first used them. And so that was just fun, just something to add to the Witches Rebirth series.
So if you want to find out when this is going to come out, definitely go to the website, become a subscriber, get the newsletter, and you're going to find out those kinds of details. I'm going to shamelessly plug 24 authors in 12 hours. This is one of our interviews today. If you are interested, this is a author helping author event. We do not do this for, the authors pay nothing. And so if you want to donate, go ahead. The other thing is we have 24 authors in 12 hours merch. So if you want a coffee cup, if you want to get a water bottle, it's in here. Definitely support us on that would be super useful. And I did mention my book, which is focused on decoding history. It is a speculative fiction set in 2055. And it is about this concept of these book whores. And so prostitution is legal. And so this is the world of 2055. The world has changed. But what the secret part is, they're actually running underground libraries because knowledge is forbidden, right? And so a little bit of a role reversal on there. But once again, women getting together and having to really kind of shift in a world and maneuver. And so it's really wonderful because I feel like these books are coming from two very different places, like actually kind of the same place, but two very different directions is what they ended up being written about. And
I love the whole book whore thing. So
I actually, on my other website, I was not going to share that, but I'm going to share that then is, if you want book whore merch, if you go to this and I have these little things that we talk about where, if you would rather have a stack of books in a bed than a man, if you find that you read at night and by candlelight, this is probably the book for universe that you are going to be a member of because it is definitely me. Yep. And my next book, by the way, is coming out next month, and it is focused midlife tradwife magic, and it is a witch series. So Michaela, I have not talked about that at all today. You're the one bringing that out in me. So I love witchcraft. I love all the things. We have to wrap up though, because our next guest is going to be on. Is there any last minute thing you want to say to the audience before we wrap up?
No, except thank you. Read my books, write reviews. If you don't like it, that's okay. I'll learn from it. The other book, Cauldron of Dagda, is that coming in backwards? I didn't do the mirror.
It is okay though.
And Spear of Luke.
Yep, and all those links are in here and your website. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day. And we are going to end the stream, and soon we'll be back with the next author.
Thank you for your time.